Fantasy can be a form of sexual addiction. Objectifying others is a form of sexual addiction. And you want to be aware of those addictive behaviors because you can't fix the problem if you don't know what the problem is. So if you are battling with sex addiction, I suggest you become familiar with the behaviors you're addicted to. At least then you have a definition behind your sex addiction. Hey guys, I'm behavioral health and sex addiction recovery coach Rob Lopicola, and today is the first of a series of 6 videos that I want to talk with you about sex addiction. What is sex addiction? And then for 6 weeks, we're going to talk about 6 seeds of sex addiction each week. On Tuesday, when I post a video for you, we're going to talk about each seed, one seed at a time. But for today, I want to talk with you about what is sex addiction. Well, first, I want to share with you my story briefly. I'm a recovering sex addict. I'm sober from compulsive sexual behavior as well as methamphetamine and alcohol for many, many years now, 12 years plus. And today, I help sex-addicted men as well as meth-addicted men overcome their addiction, change and transform their lives, and live a life where they're thriving individuals. And that's what I want to provide for you. And if you are struggling with sex addiction or multi-addicted with sex addiction and methamphetamine addiction, you are in the right spot. And if this resonates with you and you're looking for more information, more strategies to overcome your addiction and live a life where you are clean, sober, and manageable, living with self-control and self-empowerment, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the like button. I'm posting a video for you every Tuesday. So today, we're going to talk about what is sex addiction exactly. And if you are battling with sex addiction, you know that you are experiencing an overwhelming urge to continue your sexually compulsive behaviors. In spite of the consequences, you disregard all the consequences that you are experiencing because of your sex addiction, and you have the inability to stop, regardless of the consequences, regardless of your desire to stop and change your life, you seemingly are unable. Sex addiction is a true addiction. According to the World Health Organization, it is a mental health disorder, and you are multi-addicted when you're sex addicted, not just with methamphetamine or alcohol or other substances. You're actually addicted to the high your brain produces during certain sexual behaviors. The dopamine release is massive when it comes to those compulsive sexual behaviors that you are addicted to. And keep in mind, sex addiction is not an addiction to sex. It's an addiction to certain sexual behaviors that give you the fix, whatever those behaviors are. And it's really important while you're learning about yourself and your sex addiction to understand what behaviors you are compulsively addicted to, whether it's voyeurism, bath clubs, sex clubs, pornography, masturbation, perhaps living in your own brain of fantasy. Fantasy can be a form of sexual addiction. Objectifying others is a form of sexual addiction. And you want to be aware of those addictive behaviors because you can't fix the problem if you don't know what the problem is. So if you are battling with sex addiction, I suggest you become familiar with the behaviors you're addicted to. At least then you have a definition behind your sex addiction. You could be in a relationship and you're not sexually addicted to your partner, but you find yourself addicted to glory holes or anonymous sex or hooking up in public places. Perhaps that voyeurism, a lot of addiction to voyeurism out there today, especially those that are addicted to pornography, they tend to have an addiction to voyeurism or watching others have sex. It's amazing what a pornography addiction does to the brain. And that dopamine release is important to understand that when you are in your compulsive sexual behaviors, your brain's releasing massive amounts of dopamine. So your body becomes physically addicted to the rush, that adrenaline, that dopamine that's released into the bloodstream. So sex addiction can simply and easily be defined by three characteristics. One, the overwhelming urge to act out in those sexually compulsive behaviors. Two, totally disregarding the consequences of your sexual behavior. And three, of course, the inability to stop in spite of your desire to stop. And if you are sex addicted, it's likely you've been addicted for years, because in the beginning of sex addiction, as it's progressing, you're not necessarily unmanageable. Your life is still manageable for a while until the sex addiction makes your life unmanageable. In essence, you have to start experiencing losing things, like losing your relationship, losing your jobs, losing your career, losing your financial stability, losing your reputation, ruining your reputation. See, we have to start losing things to really start taking a look at our sex addiction. So if you're here, you probably are facing losing things in your life already. If not, perhaps you have lost your self-esteem and your self-confidence. You have a really detrimental internal dialogue. You're self-deprecating all the time. You're talking down to yourself. You're abusing yourself verbally because you feel inferior and dirty and unworthy and unlovable because of these sexual behaviors that you've been involved with for the last 5, 10, 15 years or more. The average person is sex addicted by 18, and the average person seeks help for their sex addiction around the age of 37, according to some numbers. So a lot of sex addicts are experiencing their addiction progressing for nearly 2 decades before they're willing to really take a hard look at the sex addiction. And what's really tough about sex addiction is it feels good. The high feels good. The physical sensation, the sexual pleasure feels good. Very hard to give up something that feels good unless your life has become so unmanageable and you have so much pain and you're hurting so many other people that are in your life, like your wife or your husband or a significant other who's hurting because of your behavior, and they're approaching you about your sex addiction and they want to see some changes, and you're here to start taking a look at making them. So sex addiction is a mental health disorder, and it's a true addiction. And I'll tell you, it can totally destroy your life, and it could destroy everybody that's within your circle. So I'm glad you're here to take a look at your sex addiction. But I want to take a look at how you use your sexually compulsive behaviors as a drug. And there are 4 attributes to the way you use your sex addiction as a drug. 1, you use it as an anesthetic. You use sex to numb pain. 2, you use it as a tranquilizer. You use sex to relieve stress. 3, mood elevator. You can use sex to feel better when you're depressed or lonely. And 4, simply mind-altering substance. You can use sex to escape reality. And a lot of that is physical and in fantasy. A lot of it's in the way you think. You can see someone on the side of the road and fantasize about that person all day. Most sex-addicted men are thinking about sex more than 50% of the day, and they're obsessed with that sex. Obsession is a key ingredient to those who are sex addicted. That obsession is significant and life-altering. It'll distract you from work. It'll distract you from your relationship. The obsession about sex or sexual fantasy, or the obsession about going to a sex club tonight, or the obsession about watching pornography later can certainly distract the whole rhythm of your day. The mind obsession can be destructive and will hurt you. And this is a disease of the mind, body, and spirit. Sex addiction is a disease of the mind, which is the obsession, that non-stop obsession. And once you're obsessing about sexual behavior, odds are it's going to lead to acting on those obsessive thoughts. You're not going to do something if you're not thinking about it. So odds are, if you're thinking about it and thinking about it obsessively, you're going to make decisions to act on it. I've learned during the course of my life transformation is that I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I'm responsible what I do with that thought. I'm responsible for my thoughts that lead me to obsession. So you are responsible for how you're thinking. But in active sex addiction, that thinking will really take you down the road of obsession time and time again. So we have the use of sex for drugs. We also use sex obsessively for obsession, and we use sex compulsively, the compulsion. That is the body aspect of the disease. Mind, body, spirit. The mind's the obsession, the body's the compulsion. The compulsion means basically once you start, you can't stop, the inability to stop. You'll compulsively act on your behaviors that are addictive and seemingly unable to stop. It almost like you become a robot entranced by this compulsive behavior and you can't stop even though you want to. Sometimes you'll have a conversation with yourself. You can't believe you're doing this, but you're doing it anyway. You compulsively are experiencing this sexual behavior and you seemingly are unable to stop. And it's confusing you. You want to stop, you want to change, and for some reason, you just can't stop. And it's overwhelming you, it's confusing you, and probably making you feel hopeless. The consequences of your sex addiction, obviously, as we talked a little bit about, marriage, your relationship could be failing, financial security could be lost, your jobs or careers could go down the toilet, but you're also losing hope. You become hopeless. You become seemingly depressed and feel as though there's no way out. And a consequence of hopelessness and sex addiction is suicidal ideation, thinking about suicide. You don't see any other way out, but there is. There are ways out. There are strategies and techniques you can use to escape your sex addiction. And I have on my website, sexaddictionrelief.com, a 10-step strategy session that's free. It's 30 minutes long. You can watch it now. I'll have the link below in the description. I want you to check out my 10-step strategy session. It's 30 minutes, 10 steps, 10 strategies you can use right now to begin breaking the cycle of your active sex addiction. I strongly suggest you take a look at that so you can finally start utilizing some tools to break your pattern of active sex addiction. So what's going to happen from here now for the next 6 weeks, I want to continue this series. And we're going to take a look at the seeds of addiction, the seeds of sex addiction. And I'm going to talk about one seed per week every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks. So please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button and you can hit the bell. The bell will notify you every time I post a new video. And I really want you to pay attention to this series for the next 6 weeks. Today's the beginning of the series, and then I have 6 more videos every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks to really get into depth about the seeds of your sex addiction. Because the more you understand about yourself and your sex addiction, then the more you can do to get into the solution rather than living in the problem. If you're multi-addicted, you're struggling with meth addiction, this is the place for you as well. I was meth addicted for many years, alcohol addicted, and sex addicted for a long, long time, and have many, many years now free from the grip of active sex addiction. And I'm so grateful. I wouldn't refund this life for the chaos you may be experiencing now and living in this world of chaos and addiction and only dreaming of escaping. I am now living in that dream, and I love it, and I want to help get you there. So thanks for being here. Thanks for spending 12 or 13 minutes with me today, and I hope you got a lot out of this. And I want to be here to help you. So make sure you watch my videos. I have over 100 videos on my channel to offer you help to break free from your horrific addictions. You have a great day. Be well. And God bless. Take care.